Imagine living in a reality where love is confused with control, where every decision in your life is shaped by someone else, even if that person has the best intentions. Overcoming and autonomy are words that seem distant, almost unattainable. Lauren, a young autistic woman, lives exactly this reality. Her mother, fearing the hardships of the outside world, believes that keeping her under her wing is the only way to protect her. But is this suffocating protection really what Lauren needs? Or was the mother, without realizing it, preventing her daughter from flourishing, from finding her own path? In this family drama, you will discover how a young girl's desire for independence can become the starting point for a true turnaround. Inspired by her own talents and those around her, Lauren decides to fight the expectation that she be eternally dependent. And what happens when a mother, driven by love, has to face the reality that protecting too much can mean arresting? This story is about much more than just a battle between mother and daughter. It's a reflection on the limits of altruism and the power of self-discovery. The answer to this question involves moments of pain, conflict, and, above all, transformation. Get ready to dive into a plot full of emotion, where forgiveness and acceptance become the keys to true freedom. Did you like this beginning? So, don't miss the chance to follow every step of Lauren's journey towards autonomy and discover the unfolding of this exciting story of love, struggle, and liberation. Subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey of transformation. Join us for more inspiring stories that touch the heart and provoke deep reflection. From the beginning, we noticed Lauren's mother's exaggerated care. Every step the daughter takes seems to be closely monitored, almost suffocating. The mother, driven by a love that, instead of liberating, imprisons, believes that she is protecting Lauren from the world. But to what extent is this protection and not control? "You forgot your lunchbox again," she says with a smile, as she delivers her daughter's lunch to school. It's a show of affection, but at the same time a form of control that prevents Lauren from taking on small responsibilities. There is something universal about this gesture. How many of us have had someone by our side who, in an attempt to protect us, ended up limiting us? This creates a silent paradox. Overcoming challenges only happens when we allow ourselves to make mistakes and learn from our failures, something Lauren doesn't seem to have the chance to experience under her mother's watchful eyes. Lauren's mother, despite being well-intentioned, maintains a strict routine for her daughter. Not only does she choose the clothes that Lauren will wear, but she even cuts the bread crusts as if Lauren were still a small child. This behavior makes it clear that, for her mother, Lauren is not ready for the world. But is anyone really? Or rather, do we need to be completely ready to face the unknown? Overcoming life's barriers requires boldness, and Lauren's mother, perhaps out of fear of losing control, prevents her from discovering her own courage. It's that kind of family drama that many experience daily, where love and concern end up becoming barriers to personal growth. Lauren's every little decision is questioned. "Do you really need those headphones?" asks the mother, implying that the constant use of headphones is a sign of escaping from reality. But is it really? Or would it be a way for Lauren to deal with a world that, for her, sometimes seems overwhelming? It's interesting to think how, in many families, conflict between parents and children arises from a deep misunderstanding of each person's individual needs. And of course, this is where the mother's altruism becomes a wall that separates, rather than unites. The desire to protect ends up ignoring the true needs of those she loves. Lauren's life is carefully planned by her mother. Even her friendships are supervised. However, it is impossible to control everything. And this obsession with control reveals more about the mother's fear than about Lauren's inability to take care of herself. Often, the drama is there, a battle between the fear of the unknown and the need to open up to it. Lauren begins to realize, albeit in a subtle way, that her path to overcoming depends on her ability to free herself from this control. Her mother sees the world as a place full of dangers, but Lauren begins to see it as a place full of possibilities. The dialogues between mother and daughter are full of emotional tension. In a particularly intense scene, the mother, while adjusting Lauren's hair, says, "It's okay now, honey. Mommy takes care of everything." This phrase, although sweet, carries a suffocating weight. How many times do people around us believe that taking care of everything for us is the best solution? But true overcoming comes from autonomy, from the courage to face challenges alone. Lauren's mother, although well-intentioned, doesn't realize that she is robbing her daughter of the opportunity to grow up. This kind of altruism is more harmful than it seems. The turnaround begins to take shape. Lauren, even with her overprotection, feels a growing restlessness within her. She begins to question herself. Is always living under her mother's wings really living? Here we see an interesting parallel to many stories of young people struggling to find their own path, even when it means disappointing those they love. Lauren's mother, blinded by her desire to protect, doesn't realize she's stopping her daughter from flourishing. It is a common conflict, but full of nuances, which makes us reflect on the balance between care and freedom. Deep down, the mother believes she is saving Lauren from failure, from the pain of the world. She thinks that by controlling every aspect of her daughter's life, she is preventing suffering. But ironically, it is in this control that the real drama lies. Lauren doesn't have the chance to experience life in its entirety, to make mistakes, to get up after a fall. The mother, in her attempt to avoid suffering, ends up creating another type of pain, the pain of never having the chance to really live. It's a valuable lesson that many of us need to learn. Growth and overcoming only happen when we face the world on our own. Throughout the plot, it becomes increasingly clear that the mother's love for Lauren is genuine, but also suffocating. She doesn't realize that true altruism often involves letting go, allowing the loved one to face their own challenges. A practical example would be how, in many families, parents hesitate to let their children leave the house, fearing that the outside world is too cruel. But it is exactly this fear that prevents both parents and children from overcoming it. For Lauren, this excessive control is becoming a heavy burden, something she can no longer carry. However, it is not easy for Lauren to confront her mother. Family dynamics have always been built around this dependent relationship, where the mother assumes the role of protector and Lauren that of the protected. Breaking this cycle requires courage that Lauren is still discovering within herself. But the seed of the turnaround has already been planted. Little by little, the protagonist begins to understand that, to overcome her own challenges, she will need to free herself from her mother's expectations and fears. And that's the kind of inspiration many of us seek in our own lives. The courage to step out of the shadows of those we love, to walk our own path. And that's when the real twist reveals itself. Lauren, who has always been seen as fragile and dependent, begins to find her own strength. The journey to independence is slow, full of ups and downs, but absolutely necessary. The mother, trapped in her own insecurities, still doesn't realize that the greatest gift she can give her daughter is freedom. It is at this point in the story that the viewer begins to wonder, will Lauren be able to free herself? And more importantly, will your mother be able to see the need for this liberation? The suspense grows, and the narrative leaves us eager to discover what will come next. Lauren always felt like there was something more than the bubble her mother carefully constructed around her. Every morning, as she saw the world through the window, she dreamed of the freedom she never had. Her passion for art was her only escape, the only place where she could truly be herself. And although her mother said she wasn't ready, that the world was too dangerous for someone like her, Lauren began to realize that only through overcoming could she discover her true self. Every line she drew was a small step towards her independence, but the hardest battle was yet to come, convincing her mother to let her fly. Art had always been her secret passion, something her mother saw as just a hobby, a temporary distraction. "You need something more stable," her mother said. But Lauren couldn't ignore the call that came from the depths of her soul. We've all been there, right? That moment when we feel like we must follow something bigger than ourselves, something that inspires us, even if the world around us tells us otherwise. And for Lauren, that calling was art. But what she didn't know is that following this path would require a change in her life. The desire for independence was beginning to take shape, but resistance would come from where she least expected it. The relationship with his mother, which had previously seemed so stable, began to crack. Every time Lauren mentioned her desire to go to art college, her mother would change the subject or give a forced smile. "You're not ready, Lauren. The world out there is cruel. and you need me." Those words echoed in Lauren's mind, like an insurmountable wall. How many times in life do we come across people who, even though they love us, end up preventing us from growing? The drama intensifies as Lauren realizes that to be free, she will need to break this invisible barrier. But how can she confront someone she loves so much? Even with her mother's objections, Lauren finds support in her sister and new friends. They believe in your talent and encourage you to follow your dreams, to do what you love most. This support network is vital for your journey of overcoming, something that many of us also need in moments of decision. Lauren begins to realize that in order to follow her own path, she will need to let go of fear and embrace uncertainty. How many times have we heard the phrase, "follow what you love"? And for Lauren, that meant pursuing her passion for art. But like any big life change, it would also come with sacrifices and difficult choices. One night of reflection, while drawing alone in her room, Lauren thinks about the life she's always had and the life she could have. What she fears most is not failure, but never trying. We've all been through moments like this, where the fear of failing almost paralyzes us, but the desire to overcome pushes us forward. For Lauren, tonight would be the turning point. She needed to do something. He could no longer live under his mother's wings. Inspiration, after all, came from within, and every day that passed without taking action was a wasted opportunity. But how can you do this without hurting your mother? The answer was not simple. Lauren knew that by seeking her independence, she would end up hurting the person who loved her most. And that's a dilemma many of us can relate to. The conflict between pursuing our dreams and dealing with the expectations of those who care about us. Lauren wanted more than anything to be free. But how can she explain that to someone who has always protected her? Every conversation with her mother felt like a repeat of the same cycle, a vicious circle of promises of protection and fears of an unpredictable world. But deep down, Lauren knew she needed to take a chance. Lauren's mother saw her daughter as someone who still needed protection, but Lauren saw a growing strength in herself. The internal battle she was fighting was as much against her mother's fears as against her own. "I can do this," she told herself, repeating that phrase like a mantra. And how many of us do the same in moments of doubt? We cling to hope, to the certainty that we can overcome obstacles, even when everything around us seems to tell us otherwise. For Lauren, overcoming was a matter of emotional survival. She needed to free herself before she lost her identity forever. The tension increased every day. Lauren knew her mother would never agree with her decision to leave home and go to art college. But even so, she began to take small steps towards her dream. She researched colleges, read books about artists who inspired her, and began to believe that maybe she could really do this. Sometimes the first step to overcoming is believing in yourself, and Lauren was finally starting to do that. But the road would be long, and she knew that the real battle was yet to come. Even with all the fears and uncertainties, Lauren was determined to try. She knew that life was full of twists and turns, but she also knew that each challenge brought with it a lesson. And at that moment, the most important lesson was that she could no longer live in the shadow of her mother's expectations. The family drama continued to escalate, but Lauren was willing to face the consequences. She wanted more than anything to follow her own journey, to find her own voice. And in doing so, she inspired those around her, showing that true overcoming comes from within. Now the next step was to face his mother. Lauren knew this would be one of the most difficult conversations of her life, but at the same time, I knew it was necessary. She was ready to put into words what she had been feeling for so long. The suspense grew, and the viewer knew that this conversation would change everything. But would her mother understand? Could Lauren express her desire for independence without completely severing the ties that bound them? Tension was in the air, and everyone was waiting for the next big twist. As the days went by, Lauren began to realize that she was not alone. Her older sister, Olivia, has always been a distant figure, busy with her own university life. But now she was back, and with her, she brought a new perspective to Lauren. Olivia knew what it was like to fight for her independence, and more importantly, she knew what it was like to leave home and face the world. In a quiet conversation, sitting in Lauren's room, Olivia says, "You have to do what makes you happy. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. These words resonated deeply with Lauren. They came from someone who had already overcome her own challenges. But would Lauren have the same courage? The friends Lauren had recently met were also a relief from the weight she was carrying. Ethan, Olivia's boyfriend, was an example of someone who had followed his passion without looking back. He talked about his college adventures with a twinkle in his eye, and every time he mentioned how freeing it was to be away from home, Lauren felt butterflies in her stomach, a mix of fear and inspiration. For her, these reports were like a lighthouse in the midst of darkness, showing that overcoming was possible. "You should visit campus sometime," Ethan suggested. "Maybe you'll realize this is exactly where you belong." The friendship between Lauren and Ethan became a turning point. He didn't see Lauren as different or fragile. To him, she was simply Lauren, a talented girl full of potential. "You're not just what people think of you, you know," he said in a relaxed moment. Those words stuck with Lauren, like a seed planted in the back of her mind. Often, all we need is for someone to see us for who we really are, not the limitations that others place on us. Ethan represented this uncomplicated vision, something Lauren had never experienced up close. Olivia's presence in her life rekindled something in Lauren. Not only did Olivia encourage you to follow your dreams, but she also showed you what was possible when you decided to live life for yourself. "College is amazing, Lauren. You get to see new places, new people. There's nothing like that freedom," Olivia said, with a smile on her face. Her sister's words fueled a latent desire inside Lauren, a desire she had suppressed for so long. The idea of freedom, of living your own story, of finally moving away from your mother's shadow, seemed more palpable now. In addition to moral support, Olivia and her friends were always there, showing Lauren that she was more than the limitations her mother saw. They helped her see herself as a talented young woman full of possibilities, someone who could follow her own dreams, despite the obstacles. It was a lesson in humility too, realizing that no matter how difficult the journey, there were always those who were willing to lend a helping hand. And in the process, Lauren began to realize that overcoming often begins with the simple act of accepting help from others. The friendship and support Lauren received came at unexpected times. One afternoon, Ethan showed up with tickets to a local art show. "I thought this might inspire you," he said, holding out the tickets. Lauren hesitated for a moment, but soon realized that this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. She went to the exhibition and, for the first time in a long time, felt like she belonged. The artwork on the walls, each with a story, made her understand that art was more than a hobby. It was his voice, his way of expressing himself, and, most importantly, his way of connecting with the world. The inspiration coming from his sister and friends was not superficial. It was like a force that pushed Lauren to make decisions. Olivia took her to cafes where art students met, and every conversation she heard about the classes, the professors, and the works displayed in the university galleries made her eyes light up. She could imagine herself in that place, breathing art, surrounded by people who understood her passion. It was a future she desperately wanted, but the path to get there still seemed full of obstacles. However, the support of those around him made this journey a little easier. Lauren's new friends, like Olivia, believed in her talent. They were always ready to praise her, to encourage her to keep drawing and dream bigger. "You need to show this to the world," said Ethan, upon seeing one of his drawings. Her friend's selflessness was something Lauren wasn't used to. They didn't want anything in return. They just wanted to see her reach her potential. Sometimes people come into our lives with the sole mission of reminding us of who we are. And for Lauren, that's exactly what was happening. Little by little, Lauren began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could actually do this. The constant presence of her sister and her friends created a support network that made her feel safe enough to take the first steps towards her dream. It was as if, for the first time, she was beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Overcoming was not just a distant word, but a real possibility. And with each conversation, each gesture of support, Lauren moved closer to the moment she would make the decision that would change her life forever. But this journey would not be easy. As much as his sister and friends were by his side, the real battle was yet to come. Lauren knew that a confrontation with her mother was inevitable. Talks with Olivia and Ethan prepared her for this. But nothing could really take away the weight of what was to come. She felt inspired, motivated. But she also knew that, to achieve independence, she would have to face the biggest challenge: her own family. The confrontation between Lauren and her mother was about to explode. For years, their relationship was built on the excessive care and control that her mother exercised over every aspect of Lauren's life. However, Lauren had changed. She felt an inner strength growing, fueled by the support of her sister and friends, and this strength drove her to confront what she had always avoided: her own mother. One silent afternoon, words that were never spoken began to form on Lauren's lips. "Mom, I need to talk to you." The tension in the air was palpable. What came next would forever change the dynamics of that family. Lauren's mother, who always believed she was doing what was best for her daughter, was not prepared for what she would hear. "You're exaggerating, honey," was her initial response, trying to soften the seriousness of what Lauren was about to say. But this time, Lauren didn't back down. "You arrest me, Mother," she said, her voice shaking with emotion but firm in her conviction. The family drama, which had previously been latent, now took center stage. How many families have gone through that moment when the truths finally come to light? The shock, the pain, and, at the same time, the relief of finally saying what he has been holding back for so long. Lauren wasn't just confronting her mother. She was confronting years of expectations and limitations that had been placed on her. "You think you're helping me, but in reality you're stopping me from living," he said, his voice broken but determined. His mother, perplexed, could not understand where this sudden rebellion came from. For her, the world was a place full of dangers, and Lauren, being autistic, needed to be protected at all costs. But the reality is that excessive protection has turned into an emotional prison. "I only want what's best for you," her mother argued. But the words sounded hollow in the face of Lauren's new determination. The emotional climax of this discussion was far from a simple exchange of words. Lauren felt the weight of years of silence crumbling as each word escaped her mouth. She finally verbalized something that many of us already feel: the desire to be seen for who we really are, and not for the image that others create of us. "I'm more than you think. I can live my own life, make my own decisions," Lauren said, making it clear that she no longer wanted to be treated like a helpless child. The room seemed too small to contain all the emotions that were exploding between mother and daughter. Lauren's mother, on the other hand, saw her world falling apart. For her, control was a form of love, a way to ensure that her daughter would be safe from any suffering. But now, that same love was being questioned. "I do all this for you," she repeated, almost like a mantra, trying to justify her actions. The family drama reached its highest point when both realized that they were at a crossroads. Neither of them wanted to hurt the other, but at the same time, neither of them could give in. The pain of a mother who feels rejected and the desire of a daughter who yearns for freedom collide with full force. Deep down, Lauren's mother knew her daughter was growing up, but she didn't know how to deal with it. For her, the idea of losing control over Lauren's life was frightening. "I've always been here for you. I've always done everything for you," she said, as if that were enough to resolve the impasse. But Lauren didn't just want care anymore. She wanted autonomy. She wanted to make her own decisions, even if it meant making mistakes. And that's when the real emotional drama unfolds. The struggle between a mother's protective love and a daughter's desire for independence. The exchange of words between the two was not just a confrontation, but a request for understanding. Lauren wanted her mother to see her as a capable young woman with her own desires and dreams. "I want to go to art college," Lauren finally admitted, putting into words what she had held in her heart for so long. His mother, however, could not hide the surprise and fear this caused. "You're not ready," she said. But this time, Lauren wasn't going to accept that answer. The turnaround was happening, and for the first time, Lauren was willing to fight for her future. As the words echoed through the house, they both realized that their relationship would never be the same. What was once a dependency dynamic was now transforming into something much more complex. Lauren no longer wanted to be the daughter who needed constant protection. She wanted to be the woman who could follow her own paths, even if those paths were full of challenges. And that's when the story of overcoming begins to emerge more clearly. Lauren knew that, to gain her independence, she would need to leave behind that version of herself that her mother insisted on maintaining. As painful as the confrontation was, it was necessary. Lauren couldn't continue living under her mother's expectations forever, and her mother, in turn, needed to learn to trust Lauren's ability to take care of herself. This emotional battle is something many of us face in our own lives, whether with our parents, friends, or even ourselves. Overcoming, after all, does not happen in isolation. It demands confrontation. It demands that we put into words what we really want and who we really are, even if it means shaking the foundations of our most important relationships. But this story is not over yet. What came next would change not only Lauren's life, but her mother's as well. After all, the journey to independence is never easy, and the scars it leaves can take time to heal. However, Lauren was willing to move on. She knew this was the only way to live fully. What she didn't know, however, was how her mother would react to this new version of herself. And that's when the suspense grows, leaving us all anxious for the next chapter of this story, full of emotion and overcoming. After the intense confrontation with her mother, Lauren felt that something inside her had changed. Even though emotions were running high, there was relief in finally having expressed themselves. But the tension didn't disappear completely. On the contrary, it hung in the air like a storm about to brew. It was then that the opportunity that Lauren had dreamed of came unexpectedly. The art college she so longed for, which seemed like a distant dream, sent a message. The head of the art department had heard about her talent and was interested in meeting her. It was the chance Lauren had been waiting for, the turnaround she hadn't even imagined possible. The news arrived in a moment of silence, like a ray of light piercing the clouds of uncertainty that hung over her. "I've been noticed," Lauren thought, almost in disbelief. We've all had that moment when, against all odds, an opportunity appears when we least expect it. For Lauren, this message was more than just an offer. It was confirmation that her talent, her passion, wasn't just a distraction or a foolish dream, as her mother had always said. Overcoming was there, right before his eyes, and the chance to show the world what he was capable of had finally arrived. But there was a dilemma. The offer was incredible. A full scholarship, a unique opportunity to follow your passion and become the artist you always dreamed of being. However, Lauren knew that her mother would not be happy with this decision. "You can't go," he imagined her saying. "What will become of me without you here?" And that was the internal conflict that Lauren needed to resolve. How many times in life are we faced with choices that seem to divide us in half? What do we do when an opportunity requires us to leave behind something that is so familiar to us? For Lauren, this would be the hardest decision she has ever faced. On a sunny afternoon, Lauren went to meet the director of the art college. The campus, with its ancient buildings and vibrant galleries, seemed to welcome his every step. When he finally sat down to talk, he heard words he never expected to hear. "Your talent is undeniable, Lauren. We want you here." His heart raced. It was real. The opportunity to overcome all imposed limits, to live for herself, was within her reach. The director spoke about the importance of following our passions, of finding our voice in the world. To Lauren, those words sounded like music, but deep down, there was still a voice she needed to silence. Her mother's. As she drove home, Lauren's thoughts were in a whirlwind. She knew this was her big chance, but she also knew her mother would never approve. "You're not ready for the world," she imagined her mother saying. But for the first time, Lauren felt like maybe she was ready. Doubt still lingered in her mind, but the inspiration she had felt on campus was stronger. Overcoming this challenge would not be easy, but it was the only way. We've all been through those moments where life presents us with an opportunity, but seizing it means risking everything. And for Lauren, the risk was worth it. Looking out the bus window on the way home, Lauren reflected on how opportunities often come when we are at our most vulnerable. She wondered if she was really ready for this new phase of her life. Overcoming, she realized, was not just about beating others, but also about beating herself. There was something liberating about this realization, and she realized that, in order to move forward, She would need to be brave enough to break the cycle of dependency that had trapped her for so long. I can do this, he thought, and for the first time, he truly believed. Upon arriving home, Lauren knew that the conversation with her mother would be inevitable. The weight of the decision was there, on her shoulders. But now she had a real choice. I'm going to art college, she would say. The mother, as expected, would react with concern, perhaps even anger. But Lauren was prepared. She knew her decision wasn't just about following her dreams, but also about breaking the chains that kept her trapped. And at that moment, she realized that overcoming challenges was not something that could be done alone. The support of her sister, friends, and even people she barely knew had been fundamental in getting her this far. When she finally had the talk with her mother, the reaction was exactly as Lauren expected. You can't do this. You don't know what the outside world is like. But this time, Lauren didn't back down. With firmness in her voice, she explained, I need to do this, Mom. I can't live my whole life in fear. This is my chance to be who I really am. The mother, still shocked, remained silent. What seemed like the end of an emotional battle was actually just the beginning. Because just as Lauren was ready to fight for her independence, her mother would have to learn to let her go. The turnaround was complete. Lauren had made her choice. And now, what remained was to see how destiny would unfold from there. Life was full of uncertainty, but also of opportunities that could transform us. For Lauren, this opportunity represented more than just a step into the future. It was proof that, despite the difficulties and obstacles, overcoming was possible, and not just for her, but for everyone who dares to follow their own path, even when the world seems to be against us. Now, it was up to Lauren to prepare for the next challenge, turning that opportunity into reality. The road would be long, and the challenges were not over. But something inside her had changed. She was no longer the same girl who hid behind the walls her mother had built. Now, she was someone who was ready to face the world, with all its uncertainties, and, most importantly, all its opportunities. Over time, the silence between Lauren and her mother became unbearable. The emotional distance that the confrontation generated seemed like an abyss that was difficult to overcome. But time, as always, has the power to soften hearts. Lauren's mother, isolated in her own fears, began to reflect on everything that had happened. Was I wrong? I thought, as I saw Lauren's room empty. Memories of a daughter she always protected so vehemently. On the other side, Lauren also struggled with her own feelings. Although he knew he needed to move on, the pain of leaving his mother behind didn't go away easily. Reconciliation seemed distant, but both knew it was inevitable. The first sign of change came one calm morning. Lauren's mother, still stubborn in her caring ways, showed up at her daughter's new house with a simple gesture, a basket of fruit. I just thought you might be hungry, she said hesitantly. Lauren, although surprised, knew that this was her mother's way of trying to make things right. Mother's love never disappeared. It was just wrapped in layers of fear and control. It was a subtle moment, but full of meaning. Overcoming, after all, was not just about following your own path, but also about forgiving those who, in their attempt to help, ended up harming us. Reconciliation did not happen all at once. It took many small gestures. At a casual lunch, Lauren's mother finally broke the silence that existed between them. I just wanted you to be safe, she said, tears in her eyes. I was so afraid of losing you, that the world would be too cruel for you. These words, which would once have sounded like a justification for control, now sounded like a confession of fear. Lauren realized for the first time how much her mother was also struggling with her own insecurities. It wasn't just about control, but about a deep need to protect the person she loved most. I understand, Mom, Lauren replied in a soft voice. The anger he once felt began to dissolve, replaced by compassion. She realized that behind all the family drama was a simple truth. Her mother always wanted what was best for her, but lost herself in the process. How many times does this happen in our lives? We want to protect, we want to care, but we end up suffocating the people we love. Lauren began to see her mother in a new light, not as the authoritarian figure who prevented her from following her dreams, but as a woman who, alone, struggled to deal with her own limitations. The conversation between the two was long and full of emotions. For the first time, Lauren's mother recognized that perhaps she had made mistakes in trying to protect her daughter from the world. "I always thought that because I was different, you needed me more than others," she said. "But now I see that what you needed was room to grow." These words, so difficult to admit, were the turning point. Overcoming for Lauren's mother meant recognizing that the control she exercised was not a form of love, but a way of dealing with her own fears. And admitting this was the first step towards reconciliation. Forgiveness came silently, without any major dramatic gestures. There was no need for long speeches or emotional statements. Forgiveness, in the end, was something that both had already begun to offer each other in small daily gestures. In the conversations they gradually resumed, in the way Lauren's mother began to respect her daughter's decisions. The reconciliation happened organically, like the blossoming of a flower that, after a harsh winter, finally feels the warmth of spring. Lauren knew her mother wouldn't change completely, but the fact that she was trying was enough. One quiet afternoon, Lauren invited her mother to see one of her art exhibits. It was the first time she had exhibited her work publicly, and the nervousness was evident on her face. Her proud mother walked beside her daughter, observing every detail. "I never imagined you would do this," she said, with a smile that mixed admiration and regret. For Lauren, that moment was the real victory. It wasn't just about having his art displayed, but about having his mother there, recognizing his talent, and, more importantly, recognizing his ability to follow his own path. Reconciliation between mother and daughter did not mean that all problems had been resolved. There were scars, painful memories of fights and disagreements, but now there was also a mutual understanding. "You will always be my daughter," Lauren's mother said, "but now I understand that you are also your own person." Those words, although simple, meant the world to Lauren. Overcoming, for both her and her mother, was not in erasing the past, but in building something new from it. The pain and challenges they faced together transformed them, and now, finally, they could move forward, side by side. Over time, the relationship between Lauren and her mother became lighter. There was mutual respect, and although Lauren's mother still had her moments of excessive concern, she was learning to trust her daughter more. Reconciliation brought a new phase for both. Lauren, in turn, understood that forgiveness was not just something she offered to her mother, but also to herself. Overcoming the obstacles he faced required more than courage. It required the ability to leave the past behind and focus on the future. And now, with her mother by her side, even if in a new way, she felt more ready than ever to embrace that future. The end of this journey was marked not by a happily ever after, but by a deeper understanding between mother and daughter. They had learned that true love does not suffocate, but liberates. And, most importantly, they learned that forgiveness and reconciliation are essential to moving forward. Lauren was ready for the next chapter in her life, and now, with her mother finally accepting her independence, she could tread more lightly. What would come next was anyone's guess. But one thing was certain. Lauren had found her strength, and her mother had finally found peace. The story of Lauren and her mother is a powerful reminder of how our biggest battles are often within ourselves, and sometimes with those we love most. How many times have you felt that someone close to you, even with good intentions, was stopping you from following your dreams? Life is full of opportunities, but to take advantage of them, we need to have the courage to face our limitations and the expectations that others place on us. And now the question is, are you letting fear or other people's control dictate the rules of your life? The big lesson here is clear. Overcoming only happens when we allow ourselves to fly, even if that means taking risks. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because it doesn't exist. What exists is the chance to change now, to start now, to build a future where you are the protagonist of your own story. If the story of Lauren and her fight for independence touched you, ask yourself, what can you do today to break the chains that bind you? Don't let fear or other people's expectations steal your dreams. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue following stories that inspire, move, and, above all, make you reflect on what really matters in life.